Let's jump over to Europe, talk about the UK. They just announced a double dip. They're back in recession. Were they ever really out of recession? What's the prospects there? Will there ever be an end to this recession in the near term? What's happening in the UK, and which is on the doorstep of course, continental Europe?
Yeah, I'm glad you phrased it that way, because it wasn't a double dip. It was one big ice cream scoop, and on top, in top of the ice cream scoop, they put a bunch of whipped cream in the form of liquidity and QE. And so, there was no double dip. They had a serious recession, okay, from a serious crash, from a serious credit and real asset bubble. Okay, that happened. They opened the spigots with QE. They opened the spigots with liquidity, flushed everything with cheap, inexpensive cash that totally destroyed market pricing and market visibility. Totally destroyed market pricing. And that, basically they, like my risk-reward scenario, they paid $1.10 for $1 of recovery. So you're going to see several dollars of recovery for every $1.10 that they spent. The problem is, if you spend $1.10 for $1 of recovery, you're really not getting a recovery. You're just throwing money into a hole and the money's starting to pile up, but there's still a hole at the bottom. So when you stop throwing money, the money simply drifts back out the hole. And that's where we stand right now with the UK. In order for things to happen, you have to let the market forces take place. Insolvent, incapable companies have to go bankrupt and be flushed out of the system, so you have new capital, new management, fresh management, and new ideas to come in and take over. Without happening, they're going to be in the doldrums for a while. Ask Japan. I think they're on their 23rd year. Okay, 23 years later. They're still where they were 23 years ago, basically.
All right, finally, let me just ask you this question. The UK, in response to the crisis that happened in 2008, they decided to go down the path of austerity. The United States, they chose the anti-austerity path. They chose stimulus and bailouts and food stamps. Both are failing, so neither approach works. What is missing here?
I wouldn't believe that a strict austerity program would work, because if you're in recession, okay, or if you're trying to come out of recession and then you starve your revenue sources, you're not coming out of recession, okay? And also, if you are just coming out of a bubble and you start priming the bubble to reblow the bubble, you're exacerbating your problem. A problem that it's impossible to say, I don't see what the problem was, because you just had a bubble that bust. What you need to do is simply have fiscal responsibility. So you need to stimulate your economy while at the same time stop wasting money. That's like saying, if you're going to go from here, we're on 33rd Street, if you're going to go from here to 86th and First Avenue, but we're only going to make right turns. If you only make right turns, you're going to go in a circle. If you only make left turns, you're going to go in a circle. You go to the other location, you make a left turn when appropriate and a right turn when appropriate. And you don't say, we're going to have a forced austerity program, or we're going to have forced stimulus. You stimulate when necessary and you pull back on expenses when necessary. If you overdo any of them, you get nowhere.
Right. Well, that would require some political cohesion, which we don't have, because the various political parties are competing for handouts from the banking sector, and the last thing on their mind is to resolve any of these crises. All right, we're out of time. Reggie Middleton from BoomBustBlog.com. Thanks so much.
You're very, very welcome.
All right, and that's going to do it for this edition of the Kaiser Report with me, Max Kaiser, and Stacey Herbert. I want to thank my guest, Reggie Middleton of BoomBustBlog.com. If you want to send me an email, please do so at kaiserreport@rttv.ru. Until next time, Max Kaiser saying bye, y'all.